All right, welcome back to the deep dive. This is the show where we really try to plunge right into the heart of some dense material, pull out what matters, and give it to you with, all the context you need.
We're really trying to skip that information overload and get straight to those aha moments.
And today's deep dive is built around a source that is, well, it's genuinely unique. It's this blend of like ancient philosophy and super actionable modern self-mastery.
Yeah, it's an intensive guide to, I guess you could say, personal construction. It's really detailed,
Absolutely. We are looking specifically at Chapter 9, which is titled Learn Like a Student, and it's from the book Zero to Infinity.
which was written by Sonu Kumar, who most people know as the SKR or the Legend.
And this isn't just about, better study habits. It's way bigger than that. It's about a complete restructuring of your mindset.
It is, and the Legend's work is all structured around this really powerful personal philosophy. He captures it in a motto, an acronym, LEGEND.
Right, which stands for Legacy, Even, God-D, and Not Demons. A pretty striking phrase.
It is. And our mission today is really to unpack his whole approach, to understand why he insists that this student mindset isn't just some temporary phase that ends when you graduate.
He argues it should be a permanent, powerful state of being that you sustain for your entire life, until death.
Exactly. And this chapter is part of Unit 1, 10 Shades of the Legend, where he studies 10 different professions, like a model, a king, and so on.
And from each one, he pulls out the single most potent activity to guide his own life. For the student, that central activity is, well, obviously learning.
So let's get into the core philosophy of what it means to be a permanent student.
Okay, so let's start right at the foundation. This philosophy, it demands we adopt the student mindset as a, quote, permanent state of being. What are the essential characteristics that define that state?
Well, it really boils down to three things, like a triad. You've got humility, curiosity, and then this structural discipline for growth.
Okay, so humility, curiosity, and discipline.
Right. It's a commitment to treating life itself as your own personal university. You never graduate. If you lose one of those pillars, say curiosity, your growth engine just stalls.
And if you lose discipline,
Then your learning becomes totally scattershot. It's ineffective. You might be curious, but you're not actually building anything.
and the source material, it immediately grounds this idea in some pretty deep philosophy. It specifically brings up the Zen Buddhist concept of Shoshin. For anyone who's not familiar, what exactly is Shoshin?
Shoshin literally translates to the beginner's mind. And the Legend uses this as the philosophical bedrock for the whole chapter.
The beginner's mind.
It mandates this attitude of complete openness, eagerness, and this is the most important part, a complete lack of preconceptions when you approach any subject or any situation.
That sounds incredibly difficult to do in practice. I mean, especially for people who are experts in their field. If you've spent 20 years in finance, how do you look at a new investment product with a blank slate?
That is precisely the challenge, and it perfectly illustrates the contrast he sets up. What he calls the expert's trap versus the student's advantage.
The expert's trap.
Our brains are built for efficiency, right? Expertise is really just a collection of highly optimized patterns and shortcuts.
Which sounds like a good thing. I mean, we want to be efficient.
It is good for execution, but in the context of learning, it can become a trap. The expert's mind is, in a way, closed by its own success. It's filled with established beliefs and patterns.
So it only sees what it expects to see.
Exactly. The filter's too good, too efficient. And it ends up filtering out novelty, surprise, things that contradict the established model.
So you get really fast at solving old problems, but you might be completely blind to a new kind of problem emerging on the horizon.
Precisely. When you think you know everything about a field, you stop asking those fundamental, almost naive questions. The kind of questions a beginner asks without a second thought.
You get complacent.
You do. You become highly productive, but you stop being truly innovative. But the student's advantage, driven by Shoshin, it just flips that whole equation on its head.
How so?
Well, the beginner's mind is open, it's empty, it's ready to receive new information without judgment. It sees possibilities everywhere because it isn't burdened by past success or what it thinks should happen.
So in a way, being a permanent student is a strategy for maintaining cognitive flexibility.
It is. You're keeping your brain receptive to the unfamiliar, even as you're accumulating huge amounts of information.
And there's a key insight here that kind of ties it all together.
Yes. The Legend says that wisdom begins at the exact moment one truly realizes how little one knows.
That moment of intellectual surrender.
Right. When you recognize that the map of reality is always vastly larger than the tiny territory you've explored, that's the starting point for massive sustainable growth.
Okay, that sets a perfect philosophical stage. So how do we actually translate this openness, this shoshin, into action? The author breaks this down into 4 foundational principles. This is the why behind acting like a student forever.
And these principles, they really define the emotional and intellectual posture you need to move from just, hoarding information to actually building wisdom.
Let's start with the first one, eh? It's the core engine of the whole system. Embrace insatiable curiosity. The book calls the question, why, the engine of all learning.
And a true student, according to the text, doesn't just accept facts at face value. They're always trying to understand the underlying principles.
They're not content with knowing the speed of light. They want to know why that's the speed limit.
Exactly. What forces mandate it? What are the implications? They're hunting for the structural logic behind the information, not just the information itself.
But I think most people would say they're curious. We all ask why sometimes. How does the legend distinguish this insatiable curiosity from just a passing interest?
The difference is that structural discipline we talked about. And that's why the source gives this, I think it's an incredibly helpful, almost technical checklist of questions you should be constantly asking yourself.
It turns curiosity from an emotion into a repeatable habit.
It does. Let's go through them. When you encounter any piece of information, you have to interrogate it. You ask, is this true?
Okay, basic skepticism. I like it.
Then what is the evidence? And what are the counter-arguments?
So you're forced to engage with the opposite side of the issue.
Immediately. And then the most important one, the connection builder. How does this connect to what I already know?
Ah, that's the one. That's the one that builds the network.
That process prevents intellectual laziness. If you read a bold headline in a journal, a passive learner just accepts it. An active, curious student immediately asks, okay, where's the primary data? Is this just correlation? Who benefits if I believe this?
And then, how does this contradict what I thought I knew about economics yesterday?
Exactly. That last question is the true differentiator. It forces you to stop collecting isolated facts and start actively weaving them into this comprehensive mental model.
So every new data point has to find its place. And in doing so, it strengthens the entire structure.
Precisely. It makes every piece of data a puzzle piece that has to fit.
Okay, moving on to the second principle. B, practice intellectual humility. This feels like the direct opposite of that expert's trap you mentioned.
It is. It's the honest recognition of your own limitations. The book frames it as the ultimate strength, not a weakness. It's the gatekeeper that protects you from your own ego.
And it dictates that your self-worth isn't tied to being right, but to your willingness to get it right.
Yes, your willingness to learn.
But practically, how do you actually do that? I mean, you're in a high-stakes meeting at work. A meeting, I don't know, can feel like a career-limiting move.
And the book's actionable strategy on this is brilliant. It reframes the statement. Instead of just a bare I don't know, the strategy is to be quick to say, I don't know, but I'll find out.
Ah, that's a powerful shift.
It changes the phrase from an admission of weakness to a declaration of an intent, of accountability. It signals confidence in your ability to learn, even if you lack the specific information right now.
It makes, I don't know, an accelerant, not a brick wall.
And furthermore, it requires you to actively seek out people and ideas that explicitly challenge your worldview. And this is the hardest part for most people.
Confirmation bias is powerful.
It's built into our wiring. So a true student has to intentionally seek out that dissonance. They read the article from the opposing viewpoint, they talk to the competitor, they look for the data that undermines their own favorite project.
The source says a willingness to be wrong is essential. It calls being wrong the first step to becoming right.
And that's because being wrong gives you incredibly precise data on where your mental model is broken. If you avoid being wrong at all costs, you're just protecting a flawed model forever. Intellectual humility lets you see being wrong not as a personal failure, but as a priceless piece of diagnostic information.
That reframes failure perfectly. Which brings us to the third principle, C, and this is all about action. Be an active, not a passive learner.
Right. The core idea here is that wisdom isn't absorbed, it's built.
He gives a great contrast. A passive learner reads a book. An active learner argues with the book.
They wrestle with the ideas. They try to break them. They're generating output, not just receiving input. And he provides 3 really specific, actionable strategies for this.
The first is about note-taking, and not just copying quotes.
No, that's the key. You don't just copy. You have to paraphrase the ideas in your own words. And you use diagrams, charts, mind maps, anything to visually process the information.
Why is paraphrasing so critical?
Because it forces what's called deep encoding. You literally cannot translate an author's complex idea into your own simple language unless you have truly internalized the concept. It's proof of understanding.
And drawing a diagram forces you to see the relationships between the ideas, not just the ideas themselves.
Yes, you're moving information from your short-term memory, which holds the author's words, into your long-term comprehension, which is your own internal structure.
Okay, strategy 2 is a famous one, the Feynman technique.
The ultimate litmus test for clarity. You have to be able to explain the concept in simple terms as if you were teaching it to a child.
And if you can't, it means you don't really get it.
It gives you instantaneous feedback on your own understanding. If you find yourself using jargon or complex sentences, it means you're hiding behind complexity because you don't grasp the simple foundational logic. It immediately exposes the gaps in your knowledge.
And the third strategy closes the loop. It's what turns knowledge into wisdom. Application. Learning is incomplete until it's applied.
This is the bridge from theory to reality. It's not enough to read about a business concept like the network effect. You have to actively try to apply it to your work.
Or if you read about a psychological principle like cognitive dissonance, you have to start looking for it in your own life, in your own interactions.
Exactly. Knowledge that just sits in your head unused is just, expensive information storage. The brain prunes connections that aren't used. Application is what makes them permanent.
Okay, so the final foundational principle, devalue the process, not just the outcome. This is a huge mental shift from our usual results-driven culture.
It is. The focus shifts from that distant goal of, say, becoming wise to the daily habit of learning. The student focuses on keeping the engine running every single day, not just staring at the destination on the map.
It's about building robust systems that guarantee learning no matter what the short-term results are.
And that emphasis on the system completely reframes how we look at failure.
Right, the text is very specific. Getting an answer wrong is not a failure. It's defined as a critical part of the learning process. It's data acquisition.
If you only value the correct answer, you'll feel failure, and you'll only stick to easy problems. But if you value the process, you welcome hard problems because they give you the most data.
So what's the actionable strategy here? How do you celebrate the process when the outcome, stings a little?
The strategy is to celebrate the effort, not just the results. If you struggle with a hard problem for 2 days and you don't find the solution, you don't focus on that failure. You focus on the new strategies you discovered while trying to solve it.
You focus on the tools you learned, the blind alleys you now know to avoid.
Exactly. You gain process wisdom, which is infinitely more reusable than the answer to a single problem. It guarantees you gain something valuable every single time you try, which is what keeps you motivated.
Okay, so those 4 principles give us the philosophical why. Now we have to move into part 2, which is all about the how, the practical daily habits.
This is where the legend provides a clear roadmap for integrating this mindset into your actual life, so you can treat the world as your lifelong university.
Because the principles are kind of useless without the practice, right?
Yeah.
The first step is, I think, really profound. Build a curriculum for life.
You have to be both the student and the teacher. You design your own learning path. This is what separates the perpetual student from the institutional one.
Institutions tell you what to learn. The perpetual student has to constantly assess their own knowledge gaps and figure out what to learn next.
And he gets very specific about how to structure this curriculum. It starts with reading diversity. You have to dedicate at least 30 minutes a day to focused reading.
But the key advice is how you mix the genres.
Yes. He uses this wonderful metaphor. You have to mix genres like a diverse, balanced dinner plate. You need variety to get all your cognitive nutrients.
So fiction, history, science, philosophy, biographies, all on the same plate.
Right. Because different genres train different cognitive muscles. Science and philosophy train your logic. History trains your understanding of context and consequence.
And fiction, biographies, they train empathy and your understanding of narrative.
Exactly. If you only read technical journals, you might become brilliant, but you'll lack the wisdom or the ability to communicate that brilliance. You need all those different perspectives.
Okay, next up under the curriculum is skill acquisition. The instruction is to be actively learning at least 2 new skills at all times.
One hard skill and one soft skill simultaneously.
So a hard skill would be like learning to code or a new language or a musical instrument.
Right. Something that builds structural knowledge and discipline. And a soft skill is something like public speaking, negotiation, or active listening, something that improves your ability to interact with the world.
And by doing both at the same time, you're making sure your technical depth is matched by your interpersonal effectiveness.
Precisely. And the final piece of designing your curriculum is seeking mentors. But he has a really broad definition of what a mentor can be.
It's not just someone you have coffee with once a month.
No, not at all. A mentor can be the author of a book that changed your thinking. It could be a historical figure whose life you study. It could be a leader, a friend, anyone who knows more than you about something.
So you could be mentored by Leonardo da Vinci just by reading his journals?
That's the idea. You become the conductor of your own personalized board of advisors, living or dead.
All right, let's move to the next habit. B, treat every experience as a lesson. The world is the classroom.
Every conversation, every project, every failure, it all contains a lesson that has to be mined for wisdom.
And the tool for that mining is the reflection journal. This is where it gets really practical. He says to end each day by asking 4 specific questions.
And these 4 questions are like surgical tools. Let's walk through them with an example.
Okay, let's say you had a really tough day at work, a project failed, you argued with a colleague, you missed a deadline, just a bad day. How do these questions help?
Okay, so question 1. What did I learn today? This forces you to move past the frustration. So you might write, I learned our client approval process has 2 bottlenecks I didn't know about.
Concrete information. Okay.
Question 2. What mistakes did I make and what is the lesson? This is the intellectual humility part. My mistake was getting defensive with my colleague. The lesson is to pause for 10 seconds before I respond.
That's a good one.
Question 3, and this one is often missed. What did I do well and how can I replicate it? You have to systematize success. I did well in anticipating that budget issue 2 weeks ago. I can replicate that by scheduling 30 minutes every Monday to do financial stress testing.
So you're building a process from a past success.
And finally, question 4. What surprised me today? This is how you update your mental model of the world. I was surprised the junior team member had a brilliant solution I missed. My model for delegating based on seniority is clearly flawed.
Wow. That breakdown shows how you can turn a subjectively awful day into a list of objective, reusable wisdom. It's a powerful tool.
It is, and the key to making it stick is just the consistency of asking the questions. You're not writing a novel, you're just conducting a quick daily performance review on your own life.
The next habit, C, sounds simple but is maybe the hardest. Listen more than you speak. The rule is just stated outright. You cannot learn while you are talking.
Listening and observing, that's the student's primary mode. Talking is output, listening is input. If you're always broadcasting, you're blocking all incoming signals.
And the actionable strategy for this is conversation mastery. You have to focus on fully understanding the other person's perspective before you even think about your response.
Which takes real discipline. Instead of preparing your counterargument while they're talking, you have to use clarifying questions.
Like, can you tell me more about that? Or how did you come to that conclusion?
Right. Those questions prove you're in listening mode, not debate mode. You're seeking to understand, not to win.
And the final daily habit, embrace discomfort and difficulty. The book uses a great analogy here, comparing mental strain to muscle growth.
Just like a muscle only grows when it's stressed, the point where you feel mentally strained is exactly where the learning is happening. If it's easy, you're just reinforcing what you already know.
You're in your comfort zone. Growth happens just outside of it.
So the actionable strategy is to intentionally seek out books or problems that are slightly above your current level of understanding. You have to put yourself in that growth zone.
And the book adds, you have to patiently work through them.
That's critical. The student mindset accepts that deep learning can be slow. It requires endurance. And you have to see that friction as proof that real development is happening.
So this entire system, the principles and the habits, it's all designed to achieve one ultimate goal: to transform raw information into applied wisdom. Let's unpack the 3 stages of that journey.
The legend structures this as a hierarchy, and it's important because a lot of people stop at stage 1 or 2 and think they've reached the end.
So stage 1 is knowledge. This is just collecting the dots.
Right. Facts, information, data. It's the raw material. It's what you get from books and lectures. If you can memorize the periodic table, you have knowledge.
Okay, simple enough. Then stage 2 is understanding.
This is connecting the dots. This is where you start to see the relationships, the patterns, the logic. You don't just know the periodic table, you understand why it's structured that way. You can predict how elements will react.
So knowledge is knowing what, and understanding is knowing why.
Precisely. But the final stage, the apex, is stage 3, wisdom.
And this is applying the connected dots effectively and ethically in the real world.
Wisdom is knowing when and how to use your knowledge. And just as importantly, knowing when not to.
Can you give us a clear contrast there? What's the difference between understanding and wisdom in a real-world scenario?
Okay, think about an engineer. Stage 1, knowledge, is memorizing the formulas for material stress. Stage 2, understanding, is using those formulas to design a bridge on paper.
You understand the trade-offs between cost and strength in theory.
Right. But stage 3, wisdom, is actually getting that bridge built. It's navigating the budget overruns, the political opposition, the material shortages, the bad weather, all while keeping people safe. It's applying the principles with nuance, judgment, and grace in a messy, unpredictable world.
It's the difference between knowing the theory of psychology and being a great leader.
And the text makes it clear that by remaining a student for life, by constantly cycling through this process, you are always refining that wisdom. The journey doesn't end.
Now, this brings us to what might be the most pointed section of the chapter. It's the legend's deep critique of the traditional, temporary student, the one who is only obsessed with the outcome.
He starts by defining the typical student phase, from age 5 or 6 through university, as the burning fire age.
That's a great phrase.
It is. It emphasizes the incredible energy and potential of that time. And he's basically saying this phase is too valuable to waste on just following tracks laid by someone else.
And to make this critique really hit home, he uses a very specific case study, the IIT toppers.
For anyone listening globally, the IITs, the Indian Institutes of Technology, are some of the most elite and competitive schools in the world. Being a topper means you are at the absolute pinnacle of that system.
So he paints this picture. Imagine 5 of these toppers: Rohan, Sohan, Geeta, Simran, Mohan, all from different top IITs, all at the top of their class. They've all read the same books, mastered the same disciplines.
But then comes the punchline. He asks, if all 5 of them stand together, where is the no uniqueness?
Ooh, that's harsh but powerful.
Their exceptional performance came from mastering a common system. He calls it the rule of rat on ant race. They were motivated by the system, by expectations, to win a race someone else designed.
They succeeded at following the path, but they failed to forge their own.
And this leads us back to that painful but crucial distinction between information and knowledge. The text argues that topping a university just means you're good at remembering things written in books. It's an exercise in information recall.
And the book defines the difference so starkly. Books provide information. He calls it the seed of knowledge. It's inert until you do something with it.
And here's the advice that should make every professional listening pause. The author advises spending thrice time, more effort observing and processing information than you spend consuming it.
3 times more. So if you spend 1 hour reading a report,
You should be spending 3 hours in structured reflection, trying to apply it, connecting it to other things you know.
that completely inverts how most of us work. We spend all our time on input.
We do. Most people are 90% input, 10% reflection. He's demanding 25% input and 75% processing. That's scheduling time, not just to read, but to think. That's where wisdom is built.
And to really drive home the danger of just having information without wisdom, he used a powerful analogy from mythology, the Ravan analogy.
For those unfamiliar, Ravan is a central figure in the Ramayana, an incredibly powerful and complex character. And the text points out Ravan was famously knowledgeable. He knew the Vedas, the Shastras, countless books. He had vast information and understanding.
He had mastered stage 1 and stage 2.
Absolutely.
Right.
But he is presented as the ultimate example of a knowledgeable person who was corrupted by the ego of that knowledge.
His knowledge wasn't tempered by humility or ethical application.
So it became destructive. The text contrasts Ravan's ego-driven knowledge with the selfless wisdom of Lord Rama. The warning is crystal clear. Information without the wisdom process is not just insufficient, it can be dangerous. It breeds the intellectual arrogance that kills the Shoshin mindset.
So the critique isn't against achievement. It's a warning against mistaking information recall for true wisdom.
And that warning leads us directly into the final section. The legend's vision for the unique student, the one who breaks out of the rat race.
This vision starts with a simple idea. Why students don't follow the race. They think uniquely. They build their own systems instead of just trying to win at existing ones.
And this means redefining success. It's not about metrics set by an institution. It's about genuine creation and lasting impact. That's the legacy part of the LEGEND acronym.
He says the wise student should strive to build their own legacy, maybe a company or achieve a royal designation, something that signifies unique influence.
It's about becoming a builder, a source of opportunity, not just a skilled employee in someone else's system.
Which connects to this powerful idea of the student as a national asset. The text says, youth is the weapon of nations.
And that weapon should have a loud sound with more frequency. He clarifies this isn't about fighting. It's about focusing with incredible intensity on your unique passion and making that the engine of your life's work.
Which requires you to first find your passion. You have to look deep inside and find what you truly love. Teaching, painting, coding, cooking, whatever it is.
And that self-awareness is built through that daily reflection journal. By constantly asking, what did I do well and how can I replicate it, you start to see the patterns that point to your deepest strengths.
And that passion-driven work leads to the ultimate economic goal he presents. The wise student should aim to be a job giver, not a job seeker.
That is the ultimate act of building a legacy, moving from consuming opportunities to creating them for others.
And he grounds this whole vision in this idea of universal potential.
Yes. He reminds us, God gave everyone a common brain. The results depend entirely on the work you put in. It puts the responsibility squarely on the individual and their mindset.
And the final piece of advice is about the internal guardrail you need: self-awareness and ego management.
This brings us right back to Ravan. The warning is to never allow the ego that comes from learning and success to influence you. The moment you become arrogant, you fall back into the expert's trap. You stop learning.
So the final suggestion just brings the whole chapter full circle. This is the approach of the ex-student, the legend, to live with this learning phase, this burning fire, for your entire life until death.
The burning fire age isn't temporary. You have to find a way to sustain it.
Wow. That was an incredibly structured and, a truly detailed philosophy of lifelong learning. We've gone so far beyond just simple study tips here.
It's powerful because it gives you everything. You get the philosophy, the Shoshin, you get the ethical guidelines like humility, you get the tactical steps like the Feynman technique and the journal, and you get this severe warning against intellectual vanity.
And the ultimate message is that education isn't a degree you earn. It's a continuous attitude of humility and application that you have to cultivate every single day.
Right. The key takeaway for me is that realization that the learning phase, that burning fire age, it doesn't have to end. You have to fight to sustain that energy and that plasticity of the beginner, even as you gain the deep knowledge of a master.
If knowledge is collecting dots and understanding is connecting them,
Then wisdom is applying those connected dots effectively and ethically in the real world to build your legacy.
So for you, our listener, here is the provocative thought for the week. The legend emphasizes that this journey never ends, and he demands that you spend thrice time more effort on reflection than on input.
So think about the material you consume this week. A book, a meeting, a difficult conversation.
What is the one major connection or principle from that input that you will commit to spending 3 times more effort on applying effectively in your life this week to move that information from mere understanding to genuine wisdom?
Choose your application wisely. That sustained effort is how you transition from job seeker to job getter.
We'll see you next time for the Dip Dive.